Hey Rich, how you doing?
All right, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. And here we are in another great corners conversation, right?
Yeah, just getting
I
things
love
going
I
here.
love the jersey by the way. So how was the Phillies last night?
Phillies did good. They are on a good roll right now. So I'm very happy to say they are
Awesome.
on a winning streak. And but it's only one day, so we need two more wins. If they can do two more
Awesome.
wins, then we'll be in good shape. But if they don't, then it might be the end of the road. So
It happens. There's always another year.
that is true. But it's
Yeah,
we always hope for more.
for the best.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. All right, all right. And today we have a great topic, right? Like Alexander the Great. Who never heard of this guy, you know? That's my thought, you know. I believe it's one of the most well-known figures in the ancient times, you know. We either talk about him at school, you know, or throughout history, or whenever we want to quote a great leader. What's your thoughts around Alexander the Great?
I would I say, you know what, we're not at noon yet, so let's hold off a bit and go back on that. I love the question. Let's redo that in a few minutes though, because I think we need to get a couple people in. I'm still not seeing us populate everywhere, so we want to do that. Um, let's not get ahead of everyone.
All right, all right.
There we go. Okay, so we're starting to populate up into Substack. We'll give a few more minutes though. Can you hear me? All right, that's better. And then do a quick check on the other systems, just see how we're looking. Okay, got we're on the other site, so we're good there. So we just need to give like about 5 minutes. But tell me about what's going on in your life. You got a lot of stuff going on, so I'd love to hear.
Yeah, yeah, you know, just pre I'm hearing a little loop from your side.
Did it
There,
stop?
there you go. Check, sound check. Yes. Yeah, you know, here just wrapping up the quarter, you know, and obviously it's gonna be a different Christmas this time. We're waiting, me and my wife are waiting for twins. She's 7 months pregnant, you know. Emma and Nico are on the way, and we're like beyond excited, you know, with this whole you know, celebration, let's put it that way. You know, it's not even a new chapter. It's a whole new history, you know, a whole new book, you know, into our lives. It's gonna change everything as we know, you know. So it's been great. It's been great, you know, a mix of anxiety, fear, and obviously it's overwhelmed for the will and that desire, you know, to be able to be a good dad, you know, a good parent, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's been a blast, man.
Now, do you
How
have a
about
baby
you?
room that you're setting up?
Yeah, that was a great question, you know. So we talked to a lot of professionals and other parents about this, and they all go like a bunch of ways, you know. A lot of people told us, hey, for the first few months, you know, they slept in the same room with us, and some people. So we just decided like, hey, let's just set up a corner, you know, at our room so they can sleep with us until they're like 6, 7 months in, and then we kind of set up a new room for them. So that's how we're going. We're gonna go with those side bed bunks, or like how do you call the thing for the babies?
Bassineers,
The bassineers kind of thing. Yeah, they're little cribs,
bassinet, bassinets, not bassineers,
bassinet.
bassinets. That's it.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're just going with that.
Very cool. Very cool. Little,
Mm.
just keep it simple, especially with the twins. You're going to have
Yeah,
them coming, waking up all hours. So running into another room doesn't help
ex
much. Um,
exactly.
but it will
Yeah.
help later on. So don't hold off too long because
Yes, yes,
you'll be regretting it if you do. So
definitely, definitely.
you want them to get on their own pattern, their own sleep schedules,
Exactly.
and
Hmm.
not rely on you being nearby. They need to be feel that self
Exactly.
they're being by themselves. But the great part is there's twins, so they always have each other. But
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
matter of getting that separation there too, so you have that right balance.
exactly,
Hey
exactly.
Joe, I see you jumped on. Hey Matter, I see that. So we got a couple of people jumping on. We got about one more minute, and then we'll get started here. Because I think then we're starting to get into the 12 o'clock hour. So we just have checking in with each other while we're getting ready to start, and then we'll go into our topic and stuff like that. But it's just a we try to keep it casual. This is a corners conversation, so it's just a something light, but we also have some philosophy in here. So we're going to talk about some different topics over time, and we'll bring in guests as we continue on, and we're going to keep having fun with it as well. So
Exactly. And that's what I love what we do here. It's just we dive into all aspects of topics. We talk from economy, what else? History, philosophy, culture, sports, what else? AI, the LGBTQ community. We talked about history. Oh my God, so many good topics, we brought in, and it's very insightful. I've been learning a lot.
hmm and that's the goal, I think, is that we just
Yeah,
expand our knowledge. Whether
yeah,
we agree with things or disagree with things, it doesn't matter on that. It's a matter of learning other views, other thoughts, and then we take it and we decide how we want to use that. If we don't agree with it,
exactly.
then you can say, all right, I understand it, but I'm not going to use it. But if you agree
Yeah,
with it, then you can implement it into your memories and use it for other things. And that's the great part about learning together. So
exactly. And like you said, here it's the place where every voice matters, and every story has a seat. So like you just quoted yourself, like we're always open. There's no right or wrong. We're not here to, uh, impose any ideology or saying that this is right, that is wrong, or whatever. We're here just to share knowledge and learn with one another. And by the way, I'm in Brazil, Rich is in Philadelphia, so we're just, different cultures learning with each other, and making the world a cozier place, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And you have to remember out there, and it's easy to forget this, but there are two sides to every coin, meaning that everybody has their own side, their own opinion, and
yeah,
it doesn't mean it's right or wrong because they're both part of the same coin.
yeah,
But they're two sides, so it's okay to have a different thought or a different opinion, and it's not saying it's right or wrong because both sides can be perfectly right in their own way. It's just a matter of we have to come to agreements on what we want to see or what we want to do, and that's the two sides. But we have to live
exactly,
together. Two sides of a coin can't live apart because then you don't have two sides of a coin.
exactly.
All right. Well, it is now time, so you're welcome to kick off this wonderful conversation, and we'll take it from there.
All right. All right. Yeah. And, and to start, we just happen to bring a great topic, like, first of all, who never heard of Alexander the Great? I believe he's always quoted whenever we want to talk about great leaders, history, so we talk about him on middle school, high school, and throughout life, right? So, what are your first thoughts around whenever you hear Alexander the Great, Rich?
I see, I hear history. I hear a leader that also had some big quests to conquer. Um, I hear both sides of a coin there, where people say he was right and other people say he was wrong. Um,
Mhm.
so it's kind of interesting because I see a little bit of things in today's world that kind of resonate from his time. Um, so it's, history does tend to repeat. So maybe there are some things that we should look at and say, how do we avoid getting to a place where we don't want to be, and take the good from what we can.
Yeah, and I agree. And I believe right now the goal of today's Corners conversation is to kind of dissect, And first of all, like a fun fact, here in Brazil, Alexander is a very common name. Like a lot of people are called Alexander. So that's a fun fact. How it is in the US? Not a lot of people, right?
There's
Like,
a good bit of Alexes out
no.
there. They generally go from Alexander to Alex. So,
Oh
um,
yeah.
but there's a good bit of Alexanders out there. Maybe not as popular as Brazil, but I definitely know a few Alexes and Alexas too.
Got it.
Almost caught off my toy there. Sorry.
And yeah, throughout the corners conversation of today, like watch out with your Alexas out there. So, and Rich, my first thought is like, all right, like what he knew that others didn't, like why he was so great that he got the nickname. You know what I mean? Like, what's your initial thoughts around this? Like, what's your guesses?
um, I think he had a good vision of what he wanted and what he could see, and I think that's maybe the leadership part that he had. There's
Hmm.
people that just can really see a bigger picture. Sometimes they get a little bit overwhelmed with it and they take things on the wrong direction. But I think for him, he had a good vision and he could show that vision to others by the way he could tell it and explain it, and people followed along with him and they believed in him. So to get to a power like that, you have to have the right charisma. You have to have the right information that you're sharing. You have to be able to give that, at least, if nothing else, the illusion that you know exactly what's going on and you have a vision of what should be done that is right. And that's where I think people follow is they see that, they hear it, and they go, well, he sounds really confident in what he's saying, and they start to believe that. And that I think that's how he got to where he was. And then you hear that, oh, well, he was mean or whatever, things like that. There's always all those other rumors. Maybe at times he was, but he had to have some good charisma to get people to follow him. A mean person doesn't get people to follow him just by being mean to everyone. So we have to remember there are always, back to the two sides of the coin.
And you guys on the audience, like drop a comment on there or your guesses, like what he knew that others didn't, like why he became so popular and one of the greatest emperors of all times.
And what's your thoughts on what made him become popular?
That's a good question. And I believe I agree with you. Obviously, I cannot give my answer without talking about people like Jesus, Gandhi, and like Barack Obama, and like Martin Luther King, and so on and on. Those leaders, they led by love.
Hmm.
Obviously, they all have their goals, right?
Hmm.
But they have all these great qualities, like you said. They have great charismas. They pull up their sleeves and they dive into it. And and that's my guess as well. Obviously, I don't want to give too much spoiler. I'm like coding up, but
But is
that's
it
it.
possible that that can be an illusion that they're giving you the feeling like that because they have the charisma to do that? Is that what do you think on that?
Yes, yes. Obviously, like you said, there's two sides of the coins, and there's leaders and leaders. There are outliers out there, and there are people that use that influence, use their charisma as well to do other stuff. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? So obviously, I'm not gonna give out names, but we know who they are. We know who those kind of leaders are.
It's throughout the world. It's throughout the world. It's not it's
Yes,
not one
throughout the
person.
world.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
people that are like that.
yeah, yeah.
So
People, leaders who use religion to kind of, start their own terrorist organizations and so on. So yeah, I agree with you. And
and what is interesting is a lot of those people, as bad or good as they all have good intentions in their mind. In their mind, they have good intentions.
exactly,
Now, we may not think that, but they think that. And we
exactly.
have to remember that generally people aren't out to with bad intentions. They're out with good intentions, but those intentions may not be good for others or they may
Boom.
not be
Yeah,
good for the world. But their intentions
exactly.
were always initially good. They thought they were helping. They thought they were making things better.
Exactly, exactly. I agree, And talking about Alexander the Great, let's start from the beginning, his dad died when he was 13 years old, and that's when he inherited this empire, And I believe, Rich, that a lot of his personality, came from his tutor, because his dad died, so his dad wasn't around, and he became a student of Aristotle,
Mm,
and now we're gonna talk about and hear this out. This is the craziest part. He died with 32 years old,
right.
and at even a young age, he built one of the greatest and most extent empires on the planet, that went from Greece to the Himalayas, and
Hmm.
that's truly amazing,
That's pretty wild when you start thinking about it. And to know that I didn't know about the Aristotle part. That's a
Yeah,
interesting fact for him because
it is.
he had some really good qualities in some ways, and that those qualities probably came from someone like Aristotle.
Exactly, and that's what that's our first topic, his ambition, his heroic ambition, and obviously different from a lot of old other emperors at that time that were like blind for power, his ambition was a slightly different one, he wanted to live a legacy, you know and I believe, like you said, he took a lot of that, that philosophy from Aristotle, from his teachings about republics, about democracy, about this, about love, and, all these kind of things, So he wanted, like, obviously, he was seeking, to grow his empire and whatever, but he did in a very different way. And we're going to dive deep into this, different
Hmm.
from everybody else did, you know. What are your thoughts around this? About his ambition, about his goal, and, and the empire that he built?
Yeah, I mean that is like the core of many, but they don't always know how to implement that. Um, and I think having something like that to drive can make some good, but it also can make bad because then you could get
Mhm.
on the other side of that where it becomes a little bit more forceful and not
Mhm.
necessarily respectful. I think when everybody wants to have a good legacy and a good history, the trick is to have one where people respect you, not just fear you or
Exactly.
have history of you that they just remember you because of X or Y. And
Exactly.
that's I think is the true goal of everyone.
And obviously, we're going to dive into this further on, but he did something different from a lot of other emperors, and conquerors. Because, for example, here in Brazil, obviously, we're talking about 500 years ago. But when Portuguese, Spanish, came to Brazil and discovered Brazil, like Christopher Columbus, they wipe out the Indians that were
Hmm.
here, So there's stories that like millions and millions and millions of Indians were decimated, And even that, they try to impose their own ideology in them, And we're going to see that he did something different, you know. Alexander the Great, he had a different mindset, and I agree, like we said, came from Aristotle, So Alexander the Great, for example, he had this global perspective, insatiable curiosity, that like I want to know, like I want to really get to know different ideologies, different cultures from around the world. So whenever he was moving his army, throughout Middle East into the Himalayas, he would take philosophers, scientists, biologists, and you name it, because he wanted those people to drink from the fountain. Like, hi, what can we learn from these guys? Like,
Hmm.
hey, they're very developed on architecture, on engineer, agriculture, or whatever. Like, what can we learn from them? So we can kind of blend in and grow together. What do you think
Exactly.
about this kind of approach? Like,
Yeah, I think that's I mean that's a utopia in some ways where we grow together and we learn together. So that's the I think the right type of a thought. How we can work. If we work together, we can do so much more. So he had that
mm,
initial thought, which is where a lot of your civilizations and all became stronger, was because they learned from things like that on how to lead and control and grow your area, whatever that may be, whether it's a city, a government, whatever. So those things I think are in practice even today in some ways. Just they've evolved.
mhm. And obviously, and he also did some amazing stuff, that would stun the rivals, let's put it that way, because from his perspective, his rivals were like barbarians, like they would decimate,
Barbarians. Mm.
yeah, other empires and so on, and Alexander, he didn't play by the rules, so there's this great battle that they went on, called Battle of Galgabad, something like that, so they kind of have this rules, whenever they go into battle. And at this time, they kind of moved throughout the afternoon, and they got to the battleground like late afternoon kind of thing, So the enemy's army was like, hey, they just gonna attack in the morning, And Alexander did something, different. He said, you know
Mm.
what? Let's just go now, So they kind of got them on the surprise edge of the thing, So he was very clever on that kind of approach, he was very visionary on his strategy around it.
Mm.
And I believe that's one of the things that also show what a great leader that he were, because at those times, a lot of the other emperors and whatever, they were just like bossing around, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you guys go attack on this flank, and I'm gonna be here watching you guys, and if everything goes south, I just run away, you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
Alexander, he did something very different. He would go on the front lines. And by doing that, he would leave the enemy's army jaw dropped, because nobody expect the king, the great emperor to be on the front line because that's
Hmm.
the most dangerous place to be in a battle. You know what I mean? And by doing that, people would get so like mind blown by it, like, oh my God, it's Alexander the Great, he's coming after us. So that also shows a lot of the belief and the grit that he had for the goal. He would go himself. You know what I mean?
Right. Interesting. When you start thinking about
Yeah,
there's
right.
parallels all as you keep saying. So you know we
Go
can we
for it.
can connect it
Yeah.
to a lot of stories. So
Yeah, go for it. We'd love to hear your
well, I mean, if you
your
think about like that, we see that even today. Like certain people are going into other countries to that are war torn and stuff like that as kind of like that leader idea where they're going to in essence help, but really they're promoting themselves and showing, hey, I'm brave enough to be here, and that says something to people. Yeah, whether it's the right or the wrong, people see that and they go, oh, well, he or she must be doing something really good,
Mhm.
because they're willing to take that chance.
Yes, yes. And I agree, and obviously trying to see the good legacy that we can learn from him. It's like he he wanted those cultures to blend. He didn't want his culture to kind of thrive over everybody else's, because I agree, whenever we go in the Aztecs, for example, the Spanish people, they decimated the Aztecs in Central America. They went after the goat, and that's all they wanted. Like they
Mm,
didn't care about them, their culture, their heritage, their ideologies, nothing. They decimate them and say like, hey, let's take the goat and let's get out of here. And from my perspective, Alexander actions kind of reveal this more complex vision, than simply world domination, because like you said, he took scientists, he took biologists and engineers, architectures, and so on, and whenever he conquered this other, civilization, he was very much concerned about blending them together,
mhm,
like, so hey, you just keep doing what you're doing, it's totally fine, let's live along, let's grow together. And that's how, in my point of view, he was able to build such a huge empire. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Because the other guys, what they did was they would impose force and fear. And
Yep,
once they turned around, they got stabbed in the back. You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yep.
Like, was ever they had to watch their shadows, because everyone was trying to pull the carpet, and from Alexander was kind of different, like people actually like, hey, this is a great guy, obviously he did kill people, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Mhm,
but right now we're trying to see the good aspect as what we can
mhm.
bring to today's leadership kind of thing.
It's interesting, to hear his that how he people did respect they and that's the truth. When you get that type of respect, they will follow you. Now, if you abuse that respect, eventually they're going to stop following you. But it sounds like he didn't abuse it. He kept trying to grow it. Yes, he might not have always done things the way that we would like him to do, but he did try to grow his environment, and keep his countries happy.
Yes, yes, and I believe Aristotle, obviously throughout the him, Plato, and other great
Pluto.
minds from the time, they talked about the democracy. You know what I mean? So that's another great thing that Alexander did. Whenever he would conquer this next civilization, he would keep the leadership into place. Like, hey, I'm not gonna bring, Khalil that is not from Philly to become mayor of Philly, He would say, like, all right, we conquered Philly, but Rich is in charge, He is
Hmm.
from here, he knows the way around, he know his people, and we just gonna kind of stick together, and create this huge governance, So that's another great thing that he did around politics.
Hmm.
Because whenever we see other cultures and other civilizations, let's talk about, for example, uh, Genghis Khan. Like Genghis Khan, he was like the most notorious warrior at the time, but he his leadership role was based on fear, right? So like,
Hmm.
hey, if you don't agree with me, like you're done, So that's how he grew his empire. But once he turned around, everything collapsed. Why? Because once he wasn't around anymore as a dictator, everything kind of went south, and that's when they started creating their own, let's put it that way, tribes.
Hmm. Very interesting. I didn't know about the wedding requirement. That's interesting too.
Gnarly, right? That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. This guy was different. Yeah, and for the audience out there, we love this kind of content. We love to discuss this kind of things. Again, there's no right, there's no wrong. And that's what we're doing here, with this Corners Conversations. That's what we're doing with our app, me and Rich. We happen with that desire to connect those thinkers, to connect people. We create a new social network based on community needs, based on nooks. They are literally a video chat room available 24/7. And obviously, everything is gatekeeped by our cornerstones. They lead the way in every corner. They are the only ones allowed to generate content. They moderate the conversations. By doing that, we keep and maintain the depth and quality of everything that's happening around, because again, it's really a place designed for the thinkers. So a lot of our clouders are those people who are looking for depth. They are tired of the doom scrolling, they are tired of superficial content or the algorithm dictating what they see and what they do not see. They are really looking for those real voices and real impacts. And obviously, like Corner's Conversation, our app has a seat for you where you can be heard. So just explore around, find your corner, join the nook, and feel at home.
Yep.
That's what we're doing at Corners. And after this live stream, if you want to join us there, download the app. It's available for iOS and Android. And again, it's a place to have conversations and connect people from around the world. We've been meeting awesome people from everywhere, and we talk about AI, we talk about philosophy, we talk about fashion, we talk about rainbow connection, global affairs, and you name it,
Sports.
and sports. That's amazing. We're just connecting people. No more doom scrolling, all about great conversations.
Yeah. We talk about movies. We kind of we hit every topic really.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
and
Last time
next week
we
maybe we'll talk about Tron. We have to talk about the new movie Tron because that's going to be an interesting topic I think because of what it reveals. Because when you think about what the original Tron was about and what this one's about, they kind of are on the cutting edge of the technology of what
Mhm.
they're talking about. And this one is very focused on the AI technology So it'll be interesting. I'm going to probably go see it. I'm hoping to see it this weekend. So
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I saw the trailer, sounds really interesting. So, spoiler alert, I saw that's kind of about this artificial intelligence that wants to be human-like, right?
it comes into, so Tron was initially in the computer world. Now the
Hmm.
computer world, because of the AI, is somehow able to come outside into the real world, and that's where the storyline is taken, which is kind of what we fear of. So there's a little bit of that background there, but I think it's more of what are the possibilities, could that happen, and how that could help, so or not help some way. So but yeah, the thought that AI could generate its own image and then be almost like a real thing in the world, that's an interesting concept.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right.
So
So, thank you everyone for joining in Corner's conversation, and looking forward to see you on the other side, at Corner's app.
yeah, so and thank you all for being with us and taking the time, and we're going to continue these conversations. They're going to be always different. So please, let us know if there's a topic you want to talk about. Love to hear that. And then also, we can always hop over onto Corners itself and have a live one group conversation. So we have more than just Khalil and I talking. Everyone can talk. And that's another fun way of continuing on these conversations. So let's keep that conversation going. Keep the conversations with your family going. Keep the conversations with your friends going, because communication is the most important thing that we have in this world today.
Oh yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.